always our outcome, our number one outcome is student success. We want to make sure our students are provided the education that we want for our own children. As parents, we want to make sure we're providing that good experience for students. We want to prepare them. Gosh, if anything, the last 4 years have taught us that we've got to be prepared for the unexpected. Anything could come our way. And so it's really about learning how to shift when you need to shift.
Welcome, everyone, to the Change Starts Here podcast. I'm your host, Dustin Odham. And this week, I'm excited to welcome Shauna Hittle, who is the Assistant Sup of Academic Leadership at Hallsville, Texas. Shauna, besides being a phenomenal leader with a huge heart, comes to us as, if you know our Leader in Me community, we know that we have lighthouse schools. We have 7,000 Leader in Me schools across the country. We got 1,000 or so. I'm probably gonna get that number wrong. Lighthouse schools, but we only have 14 legacy schools, which are schools that have been doing life-changing work of enabling and empowering student leaders and staff leaders for over a decade. And so she's someone who helped build a school that has a culture that's getting stronger and stronger, even since she left that school and that district. And so we spend our time today talking about the power of building a culture and how to build effective teams. And so we dive in, to topics like what can we learn from being an elementary school leader to going to a secondary level, and then vice versa. We talk about what are the most important aspects to approach and building culture your first year in a building. What are things that you can do to keep it fresh if you've been in a building for 5 or 10 years? It's a refreshing conversation because Shauna is someone who understands the delicate balance that we have to have of increasing our academic results with kids, but also building a culture where staff want to stay and thrive, students want to show up and thrive, and parents are proud to send their kids to. And so, as you'll see pretty quickly, Shauna just has a very warm personality, and she has quite a bit of experience to draw on. And so the conversation is really easy and fun to have with her. So I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. It's a great conversation. If you're a subscriber, thank you for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. But most importantly, if you're listening and you hear something Shauna talks about that you think would be encouraging or uplifting to other educators in your life, please share it. Again, thank you for being a listener, and hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. All right, Shauna, it is awesome to have you here. Thank you for making time for us. And I assume what is a busy start to a school year. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Can you just tell us, so the world can get to know you, what's your education journey been like from, where you are today, but most importantly, how you got started and how you got to where you are today?
Well, I've been at this a really long time. So this is my 31st year in education. So I started way back in 1993. So I have kind of come a full circle on seeing all the different aspects of education and leadership. Most of those years have been in a leadership role. So I started off as a teacher, of course, and then taught for about 6 years before I headed into administration and served as educational facilitating academics of some campuses, and then into assistant principal, and served as principal at an elementary school and secondary school for about 14 years before I went into going into some district level leadership jobs and served over teaching and learning. And then now my current role is assistant superintendent over academic leadership.
So before we dive into that role, I think you said in there that you have a background in school leadership at the elementary and the secondary level, right?
I do.
And how is that shock whenever you cross that bridge, right? Like, I'm of a secondary background, and so going to elementary was a big shock for me. So what was that shock like for you, and what are the things that you learned?
Yeah, so it's really what my biggest shock was. The kids are really the same, just in bigger bodies. It's the people you work with, the adults, that are very different at that elementary level as opposed to that secondary level. They kind of imitate their age of students. And so you've got needier at the elementary level, and then that secondary They pretty much just want to know how it's done and what the expectations are. So very different sets of cultures that you have to lead between elementary and secondary. I think the biggest shock for me was just the amount of, I remember going in from an elementary principal to a secondary. It was my first one was in middle school, and middle school is just, I say I did some time in middle school and junior high. So I did time there. So that was fun because it just, there was no structure or order to it like there is in elementary school. So that was my biggest struggle, and learning how to adapt and lead that type of environment, which is very different than a controlled environment such as an elementary school.
Yeah, I think, when I think about now that I've been exposed to so many elementary schools across the country, I often think I wish I would have had some exposure to elementary school teaching early on, because I think there are some parts that that could have helped me be a better high school teacher. I'm curious, when you think about what what do you think helped you from the elementary side to be an effective leader at the secondary side?
I think it's the instructional background that you gain as an elementary leader. You have to be so much a part of the instructional day and leading that, where at secondary it becomes more about content. And I think coming from that greater global view from elementary helped me understand instruction at the secondary level, because instruction is the same at any grade level. Good instruction is still good instruction. And so I think just having that understanding of what quality instruction looks like from an elementary point of view helped me help teachers at the secondary level.
What do you think from doing time at the middle school level, the secondary level? Again, my wife was very passionate about middle school. I would call middle school before elementary as doing time. One, because I was probably a pain for my teachers then, and two, just because middle schoolers are middle schoolers. What do you think is something that from the middle school side that you could take down to elementary that you learn there that can make you more of an effective leader at an elementary school level?
Oh, I think what the secondary level brings is a perspective that you kind of keep things simple and you keep things to the point. We tend to, in elementary, overthink things, and secondary, we don't. We don't think about it that long. We just get to the point, and I think that definitely helps overall at the elementary level too with that mindset.
Yeah. So it sounds like in your answers that you do have a real passion for academics and instruction. And so it doesn't seem like much of a surprise that your title is the Assistant Soup of Academic Leadership. In that role, what are some of your key responsibilities and what are the challenges that you're currently trying to tackle within your district?
So my role is pretty big. It covers quite a few different areas. I supervise all of our schools K through 12. So we've got 6 campuses. So I've got 3 elementary schools, a middle school, and an intermediate school, and a junior high, and then a high school. And so that's my primary responsibility, is to oversee the principals of those schools and helping them to lead their campuses. I also oversee all of the curriculum and instruction for our district.
Wow. So overseeing the principals, I mean, I assume finding the right principal is one of the most important things you can do. When you
Absolutely.
think about highly effective principals, what it's PALS, because we always talk about highly effective principals, LES. What are the most important components you think when you're looking for someone to lead a school in your district?
That's really evolved over the years too. I think when I started, it was more about good management skills, and now it's more about good relational skills. It's what are your interpersonal skills, because you've got to be able to move people in different directions smoothly. And if you don't have good communication and good interpersonal skills, that's going to really hurt you in leading any of those levels of schools right now.
Yeah. When you think about coming into this role, how long have you been in your current role right now?
4 years.
4 years. So what the last 4 years have been pretty interesting for all of us. What have been the biggest challenges that you've experienced, and what are you tackling today? What do you when you think about every morning you wake up, these are the 1, 2, or 3 things you're trying to have your team move, and the outcomes you're trying to get right now?
Yeah. Well, always our number one outcome is student success. We want to make sure our students are are provided the education that we want for our own children. As parents, we want to make sure we're providing that good experience for students. We want to prepare them. Gosh, if anything, the last 4 years have taught us that we've got to be prepared for the unexpected. Anything could come our way. And so it's really about learning how to shift when you need to shift. When I entered this job, prior to that, I was K-12 before in a more of a professional development role, overseeing all the professional development and role. And then when I came, and I'd already supervised some schools, so I had that experience. But when I came into this role, that was right during that pandemic time. So we really had to shift and learn how to prioritize our everyday task. And I think we're still doing that. I think today is something that I still work with the principals on right now. I had a unique situation where I came in and had some really experienced principals at first. Then they've been promoted to other jobs because they're great principals. So I have a district full of inexperienced principals right now. I have one principal my high school principal has 10 years of experience. Everybody else has 2 years or less. So they're either in their second year or first year. So we've had to really build up. They came in as leaders after the pandemic. So working with them is very different than the principals I worked with prior to the pandemic.
Right.
So that, I think, just really helping them see the challenges of our society. And we see that in our schools. We see the societal challenges are in our schools every day, and how to navigate those needs and still keep academics and instruction our focus has been a real challenge.
Yeah, that was what I was going to ask, is that coming out of the pandemic, let's go back. You said you've been in education for more than a few years. I don't know, back in the 2000s, 2010s, achievement gap and data were talked about everywhere. And then it kind of subsided a little bit just in terms of the overall conversation. And now it's back for everyone, like the achievement gap, academics. Yet we have, like you said, a society has so many challenges that so many people are bringing into our schools. How do you help? Like, what are some of the key things that you're working with your principals to help them balance? You got to get academic results, but you also have to be there and fully relational with the people who need you.
So we've really taken an approach of collaboration in our district, that we can't do this alone, that there's no principal strong enough to handle all of it alone, that we have to really work on collaborating with one another. We've kind of gone back to the basics of that with our content teams, our grade level teams, really focused on how to have good, effective, dynamic team talks, and working smarter. You're not as hard. I think, that's kind of a cliche thing that people say, but it really is what we try to do is let's work smart. Like, what do we need to do to help one another? And sometimes that's efficient and sometimes it's effective. But you want both. You want efficient and effective. And so that's something that we're really helping our teachers learn how to count on, because it's really hard on the teachers. They've got to count on one another. And then those principals have got to lead and model that as well. We've got to, as a district leadership team, model that for them.
Yeah. So is there anything formal or informal that you all do for principals to create that kind of collaboration? Because as you know, that job can be incredibly lonely. And so especially if you're, a first or second year principal, you're probably in your head a lot thinking, man, I'm failing every day, even when you're doing a really good job. What kind of, like I said, formal or informal collaboration techniques do you all use to keep everybody together?
Yeah, so we regularly meet together as a team. We separate any kind of business or management kind of operational topics for one type of meeting. And then to help us focus on instruction and to help us focus on that collaboration piece, we have a whole separate time for that built in, to where that's all we focus on. Just this week we had a time where we're just getting our data back from the state assessments last year. We're kind of late in Texas doing that. So we were just getting that and talking about how to address that and how to move forward with that. We really had them working together with that vertically, because it impacts our elementaries, impact our secondary. And so really kind of collaborating that we just embed topics of conversation for our leaders. And so involved with that is not just our principals. We have all of our directors there as well. So that way you've got all of your support services surrounding the campus leadership teams. So that's how we kind of model that. So anything we do, we put in front of them and we model that. And then before they leave, they talk about how they're going to take that back to their own campuses and what they're going to do with that with their teachers. So I think I've learned, especially I think because I have such an experienced leadership team, that they really need that example, and they need to be able to talk through that and have someone to coach through it. So I do a lot of coaching. I do a lot of times where they'll come in, or I'll go out to their campus and I just ask a lot of questions and get them to come up with their solutions and their next steps, because I've learned that, these leaders came in, like I said, during that pandemic time where it was really just about survival and just how to make things happen and make things work in this condition. And now we're focusing on other things. Now it's about how do I transition that from management kind of things into some real deep dive conversations with teachers and kids.
So when you think about effectiveness for schools, what role does culture play in the academic achievement of kids, right? Because so often I've heard, and I would say the best light, there's a school of thought that would say just focus on academics, get the results for kids, and let's keep it moving, where you kind of push culture off to the side. It doesn't sound like that from what I know of your leadership. And so what role do you think culture plays in getting the results you want for your school or your district?
Well, I tend to believe the opposite of what you just mentioned. I don't think that you can get the academic results unless you have a good culture. I think the culture of trust has to be there. You've got to establish trust with one another. Because that's how you're going to move people into uncomfortable situations and challenging them and to do things that they don't think they can do. They've got to trust you. They've got to trust you as a leader. You've got to trust them as a team. So I think culture is extremely important. So we do a lot of work on culture building, a lot of input from our teachers and our stakeholders. They've got to be able to build those relationships with one another. Our principals who have that naturally built into them have a much easier job than those that have to work on that skill. And so we, anything from surveying people to just one-on-one conversations, but it's really relational. It's high expectations. It's really about just, like I said, building that culture of respect among everyone, and so that we understand where we're going. They need expectations.
When you think about, you have a number of newbies. I would say, my question for you with advice for them, I know every school is different, so there's no one size fits all, but as best you can to keep this in just like here's some buckets of things to think about. A new principal coming into a staff that's been there for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, what's your advice on how to best approach year one as they're trying to eventually build the culture they want?
Yeah, so you've got to watch and learn that first year. If you're stepping into a culture that already exists, you've got to watch and learn. It may not be, you might see things you need to fix immediately, but I always say you have to go slow to go fast. And so you have to kind of watch and see, get input, ask lots of questions, get the teachers and staff to discuss their concerns, their needs, what they think is going well, what they'd like to see to continue. They always will know things they want to improve on. Also, they know what areas they need help with and support with. And so get it coming from them. It never works to just come in and clean house and start over. Not if you want it to be a good culture. You've got to really kind of do it together with that staff. You can't ever just come in and just start making changes immediately. You have to learn kind of where they are and start building that trust we talked about.
That's got to be so hard for, let's say you hire, again, it's not everybody. I mean, a lot of people get this, but there's got to be principals out there who are so excited, ready to lead, have been thinking about this for a long time and have phenomenal ideas. How do you help them shelve those for a year, possibly 2, in the name of effectiveness?
Oh yeah, that's tough. And we have experienced that because, of course I want to hire go-getters. And so the go-getters want to do those things. It is about just going slow. So we have to kind of have a vision of where we want to be in 3 years, 5 years, and then work backwards from that. It's beginning with that end in mind. It's coming back towards, this is where I want to be. What are some steps I can take to get there today? and what are some steps tomorrow I can take? And what I've found is that sometimes your staff, the faster you build that trust, they may go quicker with you with those things, especially if it's something that they've brought to the table as a concern or as a need. They might go a little faster and you can implement some of those things pretty quickly. But it's usually about getting it to be their idea over your idea. So I may come in as a leader with great ideas, and I can talk about myself, just switching from districts over, when I came into this district. Well, I had all kinds of great ideas to do, but there were great things already happening here too. So it's important that you acknowledge the great things that are already happening. And if it's something that needs to happen, it's about selling it. You've got to start selling those things and planting those seeds first, because they may have a better way of doing it actually and getting the same result. So I think it's just about planting that seed and watering it and seeing what comes from it.
So you've been a part of building cultures at different levels, as in the district, as well as, like we talked about, elementary and secondary. When you think about just some core components of what makes a great culture, what are the 2 or 3 things when you walk into a school, right? So like today I brought you up here to St. Louis, Missouri with me. We walked into a school. What are the either the questions you like to ask or 2 or 3 look fors of trying to figure out, is this a healthy, high effective culture that you're walking into?
Oh, sure. So I can usually tell the culture the minute I walk into the building. I can usually see where we're at. And so the questions I would ask is, would you recommend your school to others to come work at? Would you recommend this organization to others, and why? Why would you do that? Why would you want people to come here? That tells you a lot right there. Do I want other people to join this? And how many people say that? And which people say that? What makes us work? What do we love about our job? Why are you here? Why did you choose here? And that's where they start talking about, people will work for things. They'll work harder for things that they feel valued at and that they feel like they're making a difference in and an impact in, than the people you can tell when they just are there for the job. I just come because I have to have a job and this is where my job is. That you notice that immediately you'll notice that culture. I spent some time, quite a few years in between my principalship and where I'm at now, supervising academically at-risk schools that were improvement required. So that was always where I started, was with culture, because if we were already to that stage, if those campuses were already at the stage of needing improvement required because of academic scores and all the different things that come with that, we always started with, well, how do the teachers feel here? Do they feel worthwhile? Do they believe in the kids? Do they believe in that our students can perform? If we do that, then we can make some growth here. And when you can put some things in place academically and instructionally to change your outcomes. But it has to start with your belief system and your mindset and wrapping your head around, I want to do this and I believe in our kids and I believe in our school and our community.
Well, what encouragement do you have? It's refreshing to hear your take on leadership, especially with your background, seeing, high need schools where there's a lot of pressure to get results. But there's got to be somebody out there listening to this podcast thinking, I totally agree with you. I think we got to go slow to go fast. I want to build culture, but my director of academics, my assistant superintendent of academic leadership says I have to get results this year or else we're closed. What's your encouragement for someone in that stage of how to balance that and kind of live through it, but also have the courage to build something lasting like you're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to be honest about that with your team you're leading. I think honesty is very important. It's about just saying, look, we've got to get these results or we don't exist anymore. So I'm going to need your help with that. And so you might have to push a little harder to get those results and build that trust the way you go. But I think just being very honest with them about that, getting their input on, we can do better. Our kids deserve better. You're better teachers than this data shows. How do we do this together? I think that's very important. That's kind of what we had to do at some of our campuses. And the right principal is important for that kind of leadership role. It's about somebody that can have really high expectations and focus on results, but at the same time encourage your people, your troops along the way. This is what we've got. Here's where we are, and these are our resources we have. So what we're going to have to make it work with what we have. So let's get started. But it's really weeding out, the naysayers too. If you can't be on this journey with us, I need to know that. Like, you need to come to me, and I need to find a different seat for you, because this is where we have to go. We are got to have results. So let's figure out how to make that happen. So you can kind of push.
Yeah, that's great. Because I do think there's some folks that will either just kind of begrudgingly just do academics and just ignore the importance of culture because of that, or they err too much side on culture and lose the sense of urgency they have to have. And so
Yeah,
it's a delicate balance, as you
it
know.
is a delicate balance. So I think my biggest advice is find someone to help coach you through that too. Have a mentor, have somebody that you can talk to, that can just ask questions, and who can just be there to bounce ideas off of, because again, you can't do it by yourself. And that's a hard balance, results driven and building culture. Now, hopefully we're going to build both at the same time in that circumstance. If it's already
Yep.
a performing, organization, then you just have to really focus on culture and take it higher, because that'll happen naturally.
So let's think about a principal who's been in the seat for a number of years and they have a great culture. My friends who are in that kind of position sometimes struggle with how to keep things fresh.
Yep.
What's your advice for leaders who, again, have done all the hard, heavy lifting of building a high trust, great, positive culture? How do you encourage them, or what's some advice you have for them to keep it fresh each year?
Yeah, so that's where you run the risk for becoming status quo and just being comfortable. Once you've established that kind of culture, and it's real easy to fall into the trap of just being status quo. We're okay the way we are. We like it here, or we're doing okay. I think that's challenging your team to look at what's the next step for us. We're doing great. My motto as a leader is, if we're the best, then the best keeps getting better. So how do we get better? Because the best always has to get better. So what do we need to do to excel from here? What do we need to implement? What do we need to do? Let me challenge you individually, because you've got some high performers probably, and how do they need to be fed? What do they need to do? Should we be leading some different initiatives for the district? Should we be modeling things? But I think there's always room to push and grow a team, because every year presents new challenges. So I think there's always a way to. I don't know any school or any organization that has 100% perfection at anything yet.
Yeah.
So I think we can always strive to do that, and just have fun. Have fun with the people you work with every day. Just enjoy that, and challenge one another. Set those goals and measure the progress of those goals.
Yeah, it sounds like you're a mildly competitive person, which I love. I was with a friend this weekend who's a leader in his organization, and one of our favorite questions that we love to ask people is, "Do you love to win or do you hate to lose?" And
Ooh, that's
both
a
of
good
us
question.
are college athletes. And for us, again, I don't know if there's anything to learn from it, but we both have a bias, and I'll state it here, for hate to lose, because love to win, you can feel good about. Again, I'm not suggesting anybody who loves to win is a bad person. I just think hates to lose is I don't care it's basically what you described, John.
Yeah,
Honestly, it was, I just want to be the best. Even if I'm the best now, I want to keep being the best. So I just don't want to lose. So what's the next level that we have to get
right.
to? I don't know
Absolutely.
if you
Yeah.
ever asked that, but I would love to see what your principle is. You should ask them that in the next
Yeah.
meeting and just say,
I
"Do
think
you
I
love to
will.
win or hate
Ask
to
them
lose?" And write it down and just see if that tells you a little bit about the personality. Again, it's not better or worse.
Yeah.
Probably, again, I hate to lose, so there's probably some maniacal behaviors that I have to work on there. But I do think it tells you a little bit about the personalities you get to work with.
Yeah, I do think it's important. I think that's great. I think I will ask them that actually. No, I think it's really important, and it's, you know, like I told you, I mean, I've done this for 31 years. This is my 31st year in this business, and I love it still. I mean, because I love the challenge of that. I'm not afraid of a challenge, and I think leadership is full of challenges, and I think you've got to just know the position you're in, and know what comes with that, and be okay with that, and be okay with being uncomfortable sometimes, and to grow and to perform. Um, but I don't think there's anything wrong with ever trying to be better, and always trying to achieve a little bit different level.
Hate to lose.
Yeah,
Real
I'm a
quick
hate
before we
person
get out here,
personally.
my last question for you in just a minute is going to be about the best leadership advice that you've had. But before we get there, I want to go through our rapid fire questions. And so
Okay.
the first one is, what is a habit or discipline that you utilize on an every day, ideally, or every week to make you the best version of yourself?
So I'm a planner. I really believe in Covey's quadrant um, habit habit 3. But first things first, I really believe in that. In quadrant 2, I'm a quadrant 2 girl for sure. I like to plan ahead and stay in that. That's how you can collaborate and learn and grow. So I really try to keep myself there at all times so that I can handle the quadrant 1 things that come up, which are all the fires you have to put out and all the things that take up your time. Um, I, that's really the habit I try to practice the most every day. Just what's my plan, and keeping others on a plan.
I love it. When I first became a teacher, that I got made fun of by my roommates because I had this big bulletin board that I built, like a whiteboard that was the quadrants, right? Like, what do I
Yep.
need to get rid of? And so it's the first
Yep.
time I've heard someone also say that. So basically, I geeked
Oh
out
yeah,
on it, and
that's
I
my
think
favorite. I do the quadrant training quite often.
that's awesome. So, the people we invite on this podcast, we're fortunate to have some just really thoughtful people who are in constant kind of growth mindset. So we're always interested to know what they're reading or what they're listening to. And so my question for you is, what's a book you've either read recently or throughout your career that you just feel like you have to recommend? It can be more than one, but just a powerful book that really shaped you.
Yeah. So I love leadership books. I have a lot of them I would recommend, but I think the most powerful one for me as a leader is The Multiplier by Liz Wiseman. And it is about finding the strengths in people you have. Like, you're not getting new and better, or these are the people you have that you serve, and how do you pull the best out of them, and how do you multiply their talent, and then how do I, as with my personality, accidentally diminish their talents. And I think that was a real eye opener for me as a leader. Is, my personality, I mean, there's things I can do that might diminish others accidentally. So I have to be aware of those things, because not everybody has my same personality, and they don't all think my passion is as great as I think it is. So how do I, use that appropriately? So I think that's the book I recommend to people anytime they are trying to build a team around them. It's multiplying the strengths in each of the people that you surround yourself with.
That's awesome. So our third question is, again, we got baseball fans in this house. What would be your walk-up song today? As baseball players have their walk-up songs going up. It could be, if you don't have one off the top of your head, you can think about one of your favorite songs for forever that you just put on. But what's your walk-up song?
Well, the one that comes to mind is Living on a Prayer. So I think every day I just
Great.
kind of live on a prayer and hope that, that we're just going to keep trucking along. So I don't know if that would be exactly my walk up song, but I definitely feel like that a lot of days. Just, let's do it and have faith in it, and let's go forward.
Well, I don't know how you can listen to that song and not get an air microphone or an
I
air
know, I
guitar
know.
out. So it's a
Well, see, I'm
decent.
an
I
80s
would say
girl,
it's a decent
so,
I love it. It's a great song. All right. Last question before I give you your day back to get back to your principles. What's the best piece of leadership advice you've either been giving to your principals this year, or that you've received or read about that's just in your heart that you want to share with people right now?
I think the one that comes to mind for me right now that we have been really discussing is communication. I think that, we live in a time of uncertainty. Most people aren't afraid of change. We always say that people don't like change. And I think what they don't like is the unknown. They don't know, and they fear the unknown more than the actual change itself. And so I think anytime there's change or there's unknown, communication is extremely important. So I think that, you cannot over communicate with people right now. Let them know what to expect. Let them know what's coming down the way. Let them know what's happening next week. Let them know, I think just the more we can communicate with people and keep them in the loop, then they feel like they know what to expect, and they're more willing to accept change.
That's awesome. Well, I think, communication, I feel like what's your response to people who say, "Well, I've said that. I know I've said that, but they're not getting the response they want." How do you help people understand that it's just constant communication? Because I'm sure you've heard that
So
pushback
right. So
before.
just yeah, and I say that. I'm like, well, I don't know how else to say it, But I think it's if they're not responding, then they didn't hear it and they don't understand
Mm,
it. So it's okay to say it again. And really, I can get bent out of shape about having to communicate the same thing 14 times, or I can just communicate it 14 times, and go from there. And so I think if that helps them out for me to say it again. And I always remind them that, when somebody asks you, you might have answered that question 14 times, but you've only answered it once for that person. So that 14th person needs the same courtesy and respect as the first person who asked you. And if 14 people are asking me, then I didn't do too good of a job at communicating. So
that's great. So basically, it's a posture of communication. How do you constantly just
mhm,
continue to communicate with all of your stakeholders in many
yeah.
different ways as
And
possible,
just
right?
transparency. I think transparency is incredibly important when you're talking about communication. I think just being transparent with people helps. There's no hidden agendas.
Well, Shauna, this was an awesome conversation. I appreciate you making time to be here with us. I feel very blessed to have you in our family of work, but also I just feel blessed that you're out there serving a community. Thank you for bringing your whole heart to this, and I hope you had as much fun as I did.
Oh, I love it. So thank you for having me. Yeah, this has been great.
And if people want to find you or learn more about you or reach out, what's the best way people can do that?
Well, they can put me on, I guess it's called X now instead of Twitter. So they can find me there. I don't know how you say tweet that or X that or whatever, but I'm out
Yeah,
on
thanks for
Twitter.
that.
Find me there. My you can call me up at work anytime. And no, I love to connect and network with people. So just reach out.
That's all. I have a feeling you're going to have some people reach out to you. So, again, thanks for
I
your
love it.
time. Have a great day. Appreciate you.
Okay. Thanks so much, Dustin.